inviting us here, because I'm very excited to talk about the Ontario Pesticide Education Program. Because if you read my bio, I love food, and I enjoyed that lunch. There was lots of delicious salads, awesome fresh fruit, awesome fresh vegetables, and I know that some of those fruits and vegetables are produced by the people that we're here to care about. And it's really important to me that those people that are producing that food that I love so much are well taken care of, and that they are healthy, and they are able to live their lives while they're here safely, and as well make sure they are protecting the environment that we all live and share in too. So I'm really glad that we are helping the people produce our food, do it safely, so that they can keep doing that job that I appreciate so much. So with the Ontario Pesticide Education Program, we're all about protecting human and environmental health through certification and training. And if you want to learn more about our program and see the vast amount of resources we have, check out our website, opep.ca. And if you're on Twitter, I'm sorry we don't do Facebook much yet, but we do Twitter, and if you'd like to follow us at On Spray Safety, you can see some tips we'll put up there. Now, the Ontario Pesticide Education Program is all about doing pesticide safety certification and training for Ontario's farmers and vendors. We are run out of the University of Guelph Ridgetown campus, but we are also run by a steering committee with representatives from the Ontario Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs, as well as the Ontario Ministry of Environment and Climate Change. We also have on our steering committee representatives of farmers, represented by a group of farmers from many different walks of life, many different organizations housed under the Farm and Food Care. We also have representatives on our steering committee from the pesticide manufacturers, or Crop Life, and we also have representatives on our steering committee from those folks who sell pesticides to farmers. Those people are the Ontario Agribusiness Association. So that's our steering committee that guides us in our work. And we are funded mostly through the fees that we charge for our courses. Farmers and vendors must pay for our courses, and that provides the funding for what we do. But we do get some funding from the Ontario Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs, and a very small amount, a small percentage of our funding does come from some of these sponsors as well. So just before I start about talking about education and pesticides, maybe I should ask you, when you hear the word pesticides, what are they? Anyone? What's a pesticide? What is it? It's a drug for? Very good, yes. So that's one way of thinking about pests. It's just pesticides, it's something that kills pests. So a pesticide could be any substance naturally derived or human-made that is designed to prevent, destroy, repel, attract, or control a pest. Now, for farmers, they're mostly concerned about pests such as insects, so they use insecticides. They're also very concerned about pests such as weeds, and so they use herbicides. And of course, there are many fungus or diseases that attack their crops, so they use fungicides. And perhaps many of you in healthcare are concerned about bactericides or antibiotics. Those are also pesticides as well. So when I worked with a pesticide manufacturer, we didn't say pesticides all the time, we talked about crop protection products. And so crop protection products are what farmers refer to them as, and they are used to help increase the yields, the quality of the food, the reliability of the food system, and of course to keep our food affordable. And farmers, as you know, farmers and their workers live where they work. And so it's important that when they're using pesticides where they live and work, they are doing it safely. And farmers will also be quick to tell you that pesticides are expensive, so they're not using them without care, of course. And as I'll talk about in a few minutes, there is a lot of extensive testing done on pesticides before they are registered for use in Canada. So the Ontario Pesticide Education Program has been around for a long time. In the mid-'80s, farmers requested a training course. They wanted to make sure that the public understood that they knew how to use pesticides safely. So they asked for a pesticide safety education program, because they wanted to be able to prove to their customers, consumers like ourselves, that they know how to protect the food that they are producing and protect the environment. And a big component of our courses is to protect themselves, the users of those pesticides. Now, our program became very popular after 1991 when the Pesticides Act Regulation 6309 was passed, and that regulated the sale, the transport, the storage, the use, disposal, and the training, certification, and licensing of all pesticide users and vendors in Ontario. So the Pesticides Act classifies pesticides according to how hazardous it is in order to direct the use of those products. And I'll talk about the classification system that I'm sure it has in a little bit. So the Pesticides Act is enforced by members of the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change. Provincial officers will come into pesticide vendors as well as users, farmers, and they can inspect the premises. They often look for records, so they look to see, hey, have you taken the certification course? Is your certification valid? Do you really know, are you legal to use pesticides? They can take samples of the plants to make sure there's not too much residues from pesticides being used on them. They can seize records, they can seize equipment, they can seize the pesticides if they feel the need to, and if they have to, they can get help from the OPP or local police in their work, and they can lock things up, secure them, stop work if they need to, and of course issue tickets. Now, when I was visiting one of our grower pesticide safety courses last week, the instructor there had a lot of experience interacting with the Ministry of Environment, Climate Change Enforcement officers through his other work, and he said that their role is mostly to ensure compliance. They're not always out there to make a conviction, to bring down the hammer all the time. They're out there to educate and make sure if there's improvements to be made, that those improvements are carried out when they do their visits. So just to step back a little bit, I just want to make sure you understand how pesticides are regulated all across Canada, not just Ontario. So in Canada, pesticides are regulated through the Pest Control Products Act, and this is under Health Canada, more specifically the Pest Management Regulatory Agency. And before any pesticide is registered for use in Canada, it goes through rigorous evaluation. It goes through a health evaluation to make sure it's addressed, to make sure it's safe for human use. And it also goes through an environmental evaluation to make sure the impacts on the environment are minimal. And of course, it also goes through a value and sustainability assessment, which just basically means, does the product work? Does it control the pests that the manufacturer says it does? And once it's gone through all of these evaluations, which can take years, they are classified into different levels of risk, and they can be classified as a restricted, those are the more hazardous products, or they could be classified as for commercial use or for domestic use. Now, all across Canada, those who sell the pesticides, the vendors, they must be certified in all products to sell the more hazardous, restricted, and commercial products. So just to be clear, when I say certification, generally that means you are certified after you've taken a course and passed an assessment. So that's what I mean when I say you're certified. That means you've been educated, trained, and tested that you know your stuff to become certified. Now, commercial applicators, those are the folks that actually go out and spray products as part of a business. Somebody could pay them to apply maybe to a golf course or maybe to a farmer's field. Those folks also must be certified in all provinces to apply all products. So any pesticide must be applied by a commercial applicator who's been trained and tested. Now, as far as private applicator certification, this includes farmers. So farmers going out purchasing pesticides and spraying their own land. This certification is mandatory in 7 provinces across the country. That includes Ontario. But in the 3 western provinces of Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba, the certification program for farmers is voluntary. And this certification is standardized across, the curriculum for this certification is standardized across Canada, and it's managed by the Standing Subcommittee for Pesticide Education, Training, and Certification. And I'm thinking I'm missing one of their conference calls right now. So we get together every month or two to review our standard curriculum to make sure that the training that's happening across the country is consistent. Now, as far as Ontario goes, as I said before, the Pesticides Act regulates the sale of pesticides based on the class of those pesticides. And as you see, there are 12 different classifications for all the pesticides that can be sold in Ontario. And as you go down, the numbers get bigger, the hazard level of the pesticide gets smaller. So the more hazardous products are class 2s and 3s. Farmers often, the pesticides that they will use on farms would be probably class 2s, 3s, and 4s. But if you were to go into a home hardware, for instance, and buy some Raid, you would be purchasing a least hazardous product, maybe a class 6. So there are different products based on how hazardous they are, which then tells how they can be sold across the province. Now, when farmers come to our courses and they take the grower pesticide safety course, they must pass our course. The pass is 75, so they must take an assessment and get at least 75% or better on that assessment. And if they do pass, the farmers will be glad to get their green card, okay? So everybody wants to get their green card if they want to purchase pesticides if you're a farmer in Ontario. And that's part of the Pesticides Act. Now, farmers sometimes come to our course and perhaps they don't pass, they don't get 75, or perhaps they choose not to write the exam. And if that's the case, then they will get a yellow card, and that lets them become a farmer assistant. Now, a farmer assistant is someone who is allowed to spray pesticides, but under the supervision of someone who is certified. So quite often migrant workers will get their yellow card, they will become a farmer assistant, meaning that they have been trained in how to spray pesticides, but they haven't taken the exam, but they are working under the supervision of a certified farmer, the farmer who has taken the course, passed the exam, and the certified farmer is the one that can purchase. The one who is a farmer assistant, they can apply, but they can't decide what to spray, they can't go to a vendor and purchase it themselves. So they can get this yellow card by attending the same course that their boss potentially has taken, or they can take an on-farm training session provided by an on-farm instructor, which I'll mention in a couple more minutes. So these are all the courses that we offer. First of all, we have the grower pesticide safety course, which is the main course that we offer, which gets farmers their green card. And what that consists of, it's a one-day in-class course. Usually the day starts at 8:45 in the morning and finishes at 4:30 or 5, depending on how long it takes them to write the exam. Or we have an online option as well. And all our certifications are good for 5 years. So after 5 years, if the farmer wants to keep purchasing pesticides, they must come back and recertify. So they could take the whole course again, or take the online course, or they could study on their own and come in and just write the exam and hope they pass. Now, as far as what farmers have done over the years, history has told us that they enjoy coming back and spending a full day learning the course material over again. They tell us that they like the refresher, they know it's important to their business, they appreciate the reminder, and they always learn something new. So since we've been doing these courses, we've had farmers coming back 5 times, like over 25 years, and they still come back and take the full day course. Probably about 10 or maybe 15% will maybe just do the self-study and challenge the exam on their own, but some of them do that and then they come back to the full day course if they don't pass. So many do take the full day course. Now the farmer assistant, like I said, those who get the yellow card, they can come and take the full day course with their supervisor and learn all the same information and just not write the exam. Or they can take a shorter training course from an on-farm instructor. And after 5 years, they'll need to do that whole process again, because again, it's only good for 5 years. Now those on-farm instructors are people that have taken the grower pesticide safety course, and they have also taken a half-day in-class or online course to learn how to train assistants. So an on-farm instructor is a holder of a green card, plus they've also taken a course to learn how to be a trainer. And so they can do that and then come back and do the same thing again in 5 years. Now the pesticide vendor certification course is another course that we offer, and that's for the sellers of pesticides. And those who sell pesticides to farmers, they must take a 2-day course, which they often do in class or they can do online, and they have to come back in 5 years and do it again too. Am I going too fast for anybody? Yeah, no problem? Okay. All right, so just as far as the content goes, I'll just do a little show and tell here. I brought some of our manuals. This is the manual that we use for the grower pesticide safety course. It's just a short 400 pages or so. And so we go through this all in 8 hours or so. And we certainly encourage people to pick up a copy of the manual before they come to the course and review it. And just to let you know, our exam is an open book exam, so we make sure that they are familiar with the table of contents, so that they can find all the information, not just for the exam, but they can find it for when they need to go home and do it on their own. And some of the content of the course, probably the most important thing that I hear our instructors say over and over again, the take-home message of the course is, read the label. If you're not sure what to do, read the label. If you're still not sure, read the label. Because the label is a legal document. That's what's been approved by the Pest Management Regulatory Agency of Health Canada. If you purchase pesticides, you are responsible for doing what is said on that label, because a lot of testing went into producing that label. And that's what's been approved, and that's why it's been approved to be sold. It can only be sold if the label is followed. So the people who purchase pesticides must follow the label. So we hammer that message home. Read the label, read the label, read the label. And a good chunk of the exam is reading the label and answering questions. So we also go over things like the risk to the environment, and health risk, as well as pesticide safety practices. Now our farmer assistant book, this is for those on-farm, shorter courses that on-farm instructors might provide to their assistants on-farm. This is the student workbook they have. And you'll see it's much more graphically oriented, much less text, and it goes over things such as, what's the danger of pesticides, recognizing the danger, learning what to wear, learning how to handle pesticides safely, how to clean up after using pesticides, and some safety tips and first aid. And the on-farm instructor book is similar to this one with lots of training notes attached. And the pesticide vendor course is the same as the grower course, only thicker, because vendors have to learn more because they have to learn the regulations for selling. Now we also have our assistant workbooks in 4 different languages. We have English, French, 5, Spanish, Low German, and Thai. So those are available as well. So I mentioned before that we do have an online option, and a small percentage of our folks do take our online courses. The online option is not just write an exam and be done. That's not the idea. We're making sure you have an opportunity to spend some time with the material and learn. The online courses are for those who are self-directed learners and want to learn at their own pace. So instead of writing an exam, they have to do a set of modules, and they're marked on all those modules, and they still need to get 75% overall to get their certification through the online course. Now here's just a few pictures from our classrooms. Our classrooms, we limit the class size to 25 so that we make sure there's lots of interaction, there's lots of opportunity for discussion. You'll see our instructors do some demonstrations, they have different activities they do with their classes, and they try to keep it fun. And I think that's why people come back 5 times in a row over 25 years. They come back to the class because they always enjoy the interaction and learning from the instructors. So across the province, we do about 350 courses a year with 30 different instructors all over the province in rural areas. And on average, we do about 4,500 grower pesticide safety courses. We'll do about 250 courses for farmer assistants, about 60 on-farm instructors get trained, and about 250 vendors get trained through the Pesticide Vendor Certification course. So there's a picture of all of our instructors. And I think I forgot to mention at the beginning that the course was requested by farmers, or maybe I did. But you'll see that a lot of these people that train our farmers are farmers themselves. So farmers requested the courses, and we have farmers training farmers on how to be safe and use pesticides safely in their environment and to help keep our food safe. Any questions? Oh, 2 minutes to spare.
2 minutes.
Okay, all right. Sorry, go ahead.
About language, most of the agricultural workers that are working in Canada come from Mexico. The labels are in Spanish, and the courses, do you have courses in Spanish?
We do offer our student workbook in Spanish, yes.
But a course.
We do have, actually now, with the help through with Eduardo, perhaps he'll talk about that further. We do have Spanish-trained on-farm instructors that can offer assistant courses in Spanish now, yes.
But the labels are in English and French.
That's true.
And certification is only English or French.
Right.
So training for assistants, though, are in the other languages. But to be certified, you need to know enough English or French.
Yeah, because you have to be able to read that label you're responsible for.
Yeah, the
Which is
labels
English and
are in
French.
Spanish.
No, and Canada is a bilingual country, but bilingual for English and French, so that's it.
There's a challenge with that though,
Yes.
because with the workers, the yellow card, the green card, whichever the case, the workers themselves are applying the pesticides. So how does that work for them?
Well, if there are an assistant using the yellow card, they are being supervised by a certified grower who has responsibility for reading that label. And so they are responsible for supervising that person who is doing the spraying. So if there's information on that label, they need to tell that to the person they're supervising so they know how to use it safely.
It's an organization, because in the interviews and surveys that have been done by many researchers in Ontario, we discovered that pesticides are applied for workers without capacitation, without education. So some of the farmers just tell them you have to apply this, and then they don't get courses before, so they don't have training to do that. We haven't discovered that. So is there like a regulation or like an organization to supervise that?
Yes, that's the,
to
under
like
the Pesticides Act, any person who is applying pesticides, like the class 2 and 3 pesticides, they must have certification. They must at least have the assistant course and be supervised somebody who has been certified with the grower course. Nobody can buy class 2 and 3 pesticides without the certification. The vendors will not sell it to them. So they have to have that certification number, they have to have this card, they have to show this card when they purchase to prove that they have been certified. So it's perhaps a legal issue. If someone's applying it, they can report that to the British Environment Climate Change, and they'll get a visit from an environmental officer and make sure they are being compliant.
So, yeah, if you know someone's applying a pesticide, ask for their training card or their certification card, and if they can't show it to you, then they're not to be handling that. And it's illegal, right, under the Pesticides Act, illegal. So they need to be able to show you either the yellow card or the green card. If you're there in front of them, you know.
Yeah, and we do get calls occasionally from environmental officers who have been out to visit and have found someone who can't produce that card, and so they'll call us and say, hey, have they been certified? And we've got our records back till 1991, and we'll know if they have been or not.
Sorry, I might have just missed it. I was just wondering how long for the yellow card, is it a 5-year period as well?
Yeah, all our courses are 5 years, yes.
So you have some time if you want to deal with questions now.
Oh, okay, yeah, I was just,
I have a-
Eduardo, you were reaching for something from the convention now?
No, sorry.
Yeah, I just noticed you're reaching for it, perhaps was that the poster on reporting?
Yes, yeah.
Yes, okay,
Yeah,
so,
I can, after, yeah, I can.
okay, Eduardo, we'll talk about reporting, because there is a
Yes.
process with the Pest Management Regulatory Agency to handle any reporting of pesticide incidents that they come across and want to let folks know.
Then a quick question. There is a neighboring country to the south which is bilingual,
Yes.
and many of the pesticide companies are actually US based. What's the problem?
Why don't we have Spanish labels, for instance?
Why don't we have at least Spanish?
Because Canada is a bilingual French and English country, and that's who regulates the pesticide sale and regulations in Canada, so.
But we're also multicultural.
True enough, Bob, perhaps. Let our new Prime Minister know, I'm not sure what to say. But yeah, that's the system we're in, yeah.
Well, I would say it's already there. It is- send it to the printer. Okay, that was, thank you very much.